Welcome everyone to our Q&A session hosted by the Ghana Physicians and Surgeons Foundation of North America. My name is Dr. Gabriel Asumeng, internal medicine physician working at All True Hospital in Grand Forks, North Dakota, and the vice president for the Ghana Physicians and Surgeons Foundation. This event is going to be part of a series of public Q&A sessions where we provide opportunities for people to ask questions to our invited guests to answer questions relating to various aspects of health. Today, we are very honored to have in our midst and as a special speaker to share his experience, his knowledge, his wisdom with us in the person of Dr. Bernard Kwabi-Addo. He's an associate professor of biochemistry and molecular biology at Howard University, and also an adjunct professor of oncology at the Johns Hopkins Medical School in Baltimore. I spoke with him a little bit before this event started, and he tells me that he spent quite some time in the UK where he did almost all of his education until he came to the United States to do his postgraduate studies. So he attended the Queen Mary and Westfield College in the UK, where he graduated with a PhD in molecular biology. He also did a master's degree in biotechnology at the University College of London. His bachelor's degree is also from University of Dundee in Scotland in biochemistry. So it seems like he is not scared of the chemistry and the biochemistry that intimidates a lot of people and drives us away from the sciences completely. After he graduated from his PhD, he came to Houston, Texas, and trained in Baylor College of Medicine, where most of his work was in prostate cancer research. Currently, he's a principal investigator of prostate cancer research, with his work focused on understanding the biological mechanisms underlying cancer progression and cancer disparities, with a goal to identify new biomarkers so that those those of us who are on the front lines, they call it, that are taking care of all these issues will have better biomarkers for detection of cancers, and also we would have those working in the sciences providing us therapeutic mechanisms, that is medications and treatment modalities to be able to treat cancers. He is very busy. He's authored 30 high-impact peer-reviewed scientific articles and has also published 3 books. I personally have gone through the information about one of his books on Facebook and on Amazon, and I have ordered a copy for myself and my family. And the book is entitled Check the Facts. I like to read paper, and so I ordered a paper copy, but if anybody is interested, there is also an Audible copy that is available right upon purchase on Amazon. With his 20 years experience in the United States working in postdoctoral program and in scientific research, I think it's an honor to have Dr. Bernard Kwabi-Addo with us today. I would suggest that if anybody has a question, because the numbers is not too great, you can either type it and then I'll read, or if you raise your hand, I will acknowledge you in due time, and then you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Dr. Kwabi-Addo, you are welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asumeng, and thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's interesting that you mentioned a lot of medical students shy away from biochemistry. So I teach biochemistry at Howard to the medical students, and they express the same fear. So yes, I don't know why, but a lot of people shy away from that subject. But it's a subject that is very dear to my heart. So, but it's great to be on this chat show this afternoon. Thank you.
Now, just briefly, I know that I have shared what I know about your work, but can you take a few minutes to just give us a background as to why you are so passionate about chronic diseases?
Yes, so I am passionate about chronic diseases, particularly due to the fact that, there's a pandemic going on, and this pandemic has been on the rise for the past 30 years, not only in the Western world, but it's surprising that we're beginning to hear, and actually I have personal family members that have been diagnosed with diabetes, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, and so forth. So it appears that there's definitely a rise in chronic diseases, some of the conditions that we did not even hear about like 50 years ago. So the question I ask myself is, why is that the case? And also, as you mentioned earlier, my background or my career is actually as a cancer biologist. And what I do is work in the lab, specifically trying to understand the biology that is driving prostate cancer disease. So we understand that a lot of the factors that is driving cancers is really as a result of environmental factors. And these are some of the environmental factors that are also shared by chronic diseases. So as part of being a research scientist working in the lab, I'm also passionate about educating the general public about some of the preventative measures that they can take to reduce their risk, and if possible, even avoid getting some of these chronic diseases. So I think this is what is driving me to do what I'm doing right now. So I hope that really gives you an idea of what I do in the lab. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kwabi-Addo. So the question that I have next is, and you can take a little bit of time to go delve into this question for us. We those of us in healthcare, scientific research, into health sciences, are always being barraged with the news and the data that there's an uptick of the prevalence and the incidence of chronic diseases. What are some of the factors that are driving this increase that we are seeing?
Okay, so if you could bear with me, I've prepared like 4 slides that I'd like to share with you, and hopefully this will help to explain what is driving the chronic diseases that is currently an epidemic in most parts of the world. So bear with me for a second, and I can share with you what I have prepared for this afternoon. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So again, I want to thank you for the invitation to come and talk to you about some of the factors that is driving chronic diseases. My name is Bernard Kwabi-Addo. I'm an associate professor of biochemistry and a cancer biologist at Howard University, and adjunct position at Johns Hopkins University. So with regards to factors that is driving chronic disease, I would just focus on one unique factor, and that is overweight and obesity. So overweight and obesity alone is associated with 60, if not hundreds of diseases. So overweight or obesity is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease, hypertension, kidney disease, diabetes, cancer, you name it. Now, what is really the main factors that are driving the increased overweight and obesity pandemic in the world as we know right now? And I would narrow it down to 2 very important factors. These are diet and physical activity. So most of us really underestimate the role of diet in our health. Some studies indicate that poor diet is significantly associated with a lot of diseases that I'll mention in a little while, whereas healthy diet, of course, is really associated with preventative measures and good health. There's an old Ayurvedic proverb that says that when diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. On the other hand, when diet is correct, medicine is of no need. And there's one publication out there that actually says that we should make diet our medicine. And this is very true. Diet is very, very important. So there are a plethora of dietary patterns out there. Most of these dietary patterns date from ancient times. which have been maybe repackaged, and people are now beginning to take on board this dietary pattern. So some of the well-known dietary patterns that are significantly linked to good health includes the Mediterranean diet, plant-based diet. And by the way, these two diets are very good for good health. Plant-based diet, when you look at all the various diets out there, including ketogenic diet, protein-rich diet, diet high in carbohydrate, calorie restriction diet, fasting, and so forth. Plant-based diet is the best for health. On the other hand, you have people who are making this whole dietary thing as a trend, and as a result, some people are swearing by ketogenic diet. These have benefits for short-term effects, but in the long term, and I'll talk a little bit about that later, ketogenic diet is really not one of the best diets for you. And the human body can really adapt to any of these diets, but diet that is rich in processed foods. So this includes the standard American diet or standard Western diet, such as pizza, ultra-processed foods, your flour-based foods, which are high in salt, high in sugar. These are really, really bad for your health and significantly associated with disease. So the other thing is that most of us in the Western world, and actually now also in Africa and other parts of the world, we are really consuming a lot of foods. So we are consuming the wrong types of food, and too much of it than what the body really needs. So when you are consuming way too much food than what the body needs, the rest is stored as fat. And if this goes on over a period of months to years, then guess what? This really leads to increase in body weight and obesity. And then all the risk factors, all the diseases that have been reported begins to manifest itself. Many of us think that, heart problems, diabetes, hypertension, kidney problems, these are diseases that are associated with aging. But this is not necessarily so, because there are regions in the world where these diseases are unheard of. There are regions in the world known as the blue zones of the world, where they don't have any of these chronic diseases, and individuals live to the age of 100 plus, live very active lifestyles, and have very little diseases, incidents, and so forth. So I think when we look at the epidemiological data out there, and also knowledge from traditional events, we know that, hey, there's a lot of things that we can modulate, particularly in the area of diet, to really prevent or reduce our risk of getting these chronic diseases. So another important factor that is really associated with overweight and obesity is physical activity. So when we talk about physical activity, we are comparing sedentary lifestyle versus active lifestyle. Individuals who lead sedentary lifestyle are significantly at risk of some of these chronic diseases. And so in addition to diet and physical activity, we also know that there are other factors, hormonal factors, and we're all aware of the important role of hormones. And I'll talk a little bit about a specific hormone known as insulin. So some of these hormones, when they are abnormally, when there's alteration in their regulation patterns, this can lead to diseases. And in my case as a cancer biologist, I know that hormones such as androgen significantly associated with prostate cancer risk. And up to date, the treatment for individuals who are unfortunately diagnosed with prostate cancer is all based on inhibiting androgen expression and androgen signaling, and inhibiting androgen expression and also androgen signaling pathways. So another important factor that I want to introduce is our gut microbiome. So human beings, we're actually a host to a lot of bacteria, fungi, and viruses on our skin, in the respiratory tract, in our lungs, and most importantly, in our stomach. And I think we don't really know much about their important role in our overall health. after all, gut microbiome plays a very important role in helping us to digest plant foods because they contain certain enzymes that human beings, we don't have. So they play a very, very important role in food digestion. And increasingly, we are appreciating their role in our overall health. There's a direct communication between our gut and our brain. And now there is evidence to show that, this gut microbiome, they really regulate mood. They are linked to increased risk of Alzheimer's, dementia. And when you look at an individual who is obese compared to a healthy looking individual, their gut microbiome pattern is very different. So this gut microbiome plays a plethora of biological functions. In cancer, for instance, individuals who have this Helicobacter pylori or H. pylori are significantly at higher risk of getting stomach cancer compared to individuals who don't have those kind of bacteria in their system. And of course, the past couple of years, we've been dealing with COVID-19. So this is a virus that obviously affects initially the respiratory tract, but then can pretty much be circulated throughout the whole body. And so these are some of the viruses that have important health factors. And I'm really talking about this a lot in my book because, growing up in Ghana, I'm just remembering that it's just a matter of going to like a pharmacist and then you can buy your own antibiotics. And of course, we are buying the antibiotics to really get rid of or kill poor bacteria. But these antibiotics can also kill good bacteria, which is good for our health. So you begin to realize that it's important that we don't abuse antibiotics. And there are other things that can really disrupt our gut microbiome. So these are some of the things that I'm really trying to get the public to become aware of. And these are all factors that plays a role in controlling our overall health. And of course, there are genetic variants that also play a role in diseases. So less than 10% of all the diseases, particularly when we talk about cancer, is due to inheriting or being predisposed to some sort of abnormal genes. So really the 90% of all causes of cancer, this is the area that I'm most comfortable with. The 90% of all cancers is really as a result of gene-environment interaction. So here again, we see that there's so much we can do to basically reduce our risk of getting cancer. And some of the examples that we know that environmental factors play a role is due to some of the data out there. When you compare cancer incidence like a century ago to now, stomach cancer was like the #1 cause of cancer death in the USA. But fast forward 100 years later, stomach cancer back then was because there was a lot of poor sanitary, they didn't have a proper way of food storage. So all the bacterial infection, including Helicobacter pylori or H. pylori, increases your risk of getting stomach cancer. But fast forward 100 years ago, now we have better sanitation, better preservation of food through refrigeration and so forth. And as a result, now stomach cancer is like the 6th leading cause of cancer in the world, in the Western world, at least. Similarly, lung cancer, we know the significant association of tobacco smoke with lung cancer. And as a result of a very successful public campaign, now we see that there's a decline in lung cancer and other cancers as well. So there's a lot of things in the environment that we can basically modulate to reduce our risks to getting not only cancer, but cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, and so forth. So in terms of diets, what I'm really trying to get the audience to appreciate that all the foods that we eat can be basically broken down into 3 major components: your carbohydrates, your proteins, and your fat, basically. And I mentioned that insulins are very important hormones in the human body. The role of insulin, it acts like a door that, so basically insulin will bind to its receptor and it's like a door on your cells, which allow glucose to be taken up into the cell. And glucose is what the body uses or the cell uses to generate energy that it needs for its biological processes. So insulin is a very important hormone. And I also want you to bear in mind that insulin can make you fat. It basically wants us to store energy. So when we eat foods, this is what happens to the blood serum level. Diet that is rich in carbohydrate is the one that really boosts our insulin concentration in our blood. Protein diet doesn't boost insulin level as much. And when our diet is rich in fat, really, this doesn't really affect insulin level that much at all. Okay, so why is this important? We see that insulin, of course, plays a very, very important role in metabolism, basically allowing the body to take up, or allowing the cells to take up glucose that it needs to generate energy. Unfortunately, when there's a persistent increased expression of insulin, this can lead to conditions known as insulin resistance, where even though there's high level of insulin available, maybe the insulin receptors are not really responding very well to insulin. And what is happening that you may have high glucose from your carbohydrate diet, but this is not being taken into cells. So the cells is not able to appropriately metabolize your carbohydrate intake in order to get the energy. So this is a really severe condition. It's a really bad condition, which leads to diabetes, type 2 diabetes specifically. But insulin resistance also leads to other metabolic disorders. And metabolic disorders really is what is driving this plethora of chronic diseases that we know of. So of course, high insulin level in your blood is going to make you put on weight. It's going to lead to obesity. And obesity, as I mentioned earlier, is now linked to cardiovascular disease, hypertension, Alzheimer's disease, and so forth. So the idea is for us to really become aware of our dietary components, how much we are eating and so forth. So a diet that is rich in complex carbohydrates is obviously good for your health. Complex carbohydrate is rich in fiber, and fiber is absolutely very good. It helps with metabolism. It actually helps to absorb cholesterol. So in fact, individuals whose diet is rich in fiber, you find that they are leaner compared to individuals whose diet is rich in processed carbohydrates, where a lot of the fibers have been taken away. Another important factor that I want individuals to be aware of is that as a biochemist, we know that both your starches and your sugar is broken down to the basic unit known as monosaccharide, which is glucose. So if you are saying, okay, yeah, I don't take a lot of sugar, but your diet is rich in starch, guess what? It's broken down to glucose. And to the body, there's no difference between starch and sugar at the basic level, at the monosaccharide level. So I want us to become aware of, some of the dietary intake. And in fact, there was a publication from Lancet a few years ago, and this was a very comprehensive study where they look at different dietary patterns from over 100 different countries. And it was quite interesting that, and this is some knowledge that we've known, but now we have the scientific data to back it, to show that diet that is rich in salt and sugar-saturated beverages is significantly, it's perhaps like one of the leading causes of increased morbidity from cardiovascular disease, hypertension, kidney disease, and cancer. So that tells us when our diet is really rich in high sugar intake, this is significantly linked to some of the chronic diseases that is so pervasive or prevalent currently. So the other thing I mentioned is physical activity. So now sitting around or sedentary lifestyle is referred to as the new smoke. This is a point that was phrased by the World Health Organization. This is because it's observed that sedentary lifestyle is linked to some of the various chronic diseases that are traditionally associated with tobacco smoke. So when we sit all day, guess what? There's not much happening in the body. We're not really burning off any calories. On the other hand, there's no proper circulation going on, and this can lead to inflammation. And inflammation is, again, one of the driving factors for chronic diseases. So the idea is, of course, for us to move as the body has been designed to do. So some of the things that I want to share with the public. And so this is some of the factors that I really describe in the book, Check the Fat, Eliminate Chronic Diseases. And this is available on Amazon.com. So I'm going to stop here, and hopefully we have some questions so we can start off with the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kwabi-Addo, for that extensive information on some of the reasons why we have an uptick or an increase of the number of people who are being diagnosed and who are living with chronic medical conditions. You touched on diet and exercise, and you briefly emphasized two of the diets that have evidence to support that are very helpful, and then also talked about one of the most popular diets out there today, the ketogenic diet. At this point, I want to open up for questions. If anybody has a question, this will be the time to send in your questions. While we are waiting for questions, I have one question. Okay, so there is a lot of unemployment issues going on in Ghana or in Africa, around the world. Now, I'm lucky to find somebody who decides to hire me to sit at the front desk of their company, and let's say they decide to pay me well so that I have a living wage and I can pay my bills and maybe save for emergency. But my job is requiring that I stay at the front desk. I'm by the desk all the time, answering the phone, welcoming people into the building, directing them which way to go and who to talk to and stuff like that. How do I get out of the trap of, over time, acquiring these chronic medical conditions?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. And in fact, when we talk about physical activity, this is not necessarily strenuous physical activity. In fact, if you do like just 30 minutes of brisk walk every day, it's believed that that is enough for you. So with regards to the scenario that you've brought up, an individual whose job is to really sit at front desk as a reception, hopefully you're not going to be doing this for 24 hours a day, but I think you can interrupt that setting. Hopefully you'll be able to get a chance to stand, stretch a little, and you have breaks to walk around. It's a matter of just being conscious that, look, I need to move. I need my blood circulation to keep flowing. I need to burn off some exercise, some calories through physical activity. And in fact, if you do 30 minutes of physical activity every day, that actually is really helpful in preventing chronic diseases. So I think we all can do at least 30 minutes, but we live in an environment, and not only the Western world, but also even in Africa, that is quite interesting that, people are doing less than 30 minutes of physical exercise a day. A case in point, you are driving to work every day, you stop and you walk like 5 steps to your office. You sit around all day. And most of us are doing that. I'm doing that a lot. So I have to remind myself, hey, get up and move around a little bit. So at the end of the day, you go home and then you do a couch potato. You just sit in front of television for hours, and then you go to bed. And this goes on continuously. Every day you do that. So that's a really dangerous thing. So I think we all need to be constantly telling ourselves, all right, I've been sitting for too long. I need to get up. I need to stretch. I need to walk. So, and of course, the past couple of years with the COVID pandemic, we are doing more sitting than before. And I think this is why we really have to be actively advising ourselves. I need to get out. I need to do exercise. I need to, really be moving around. Yes, there are those who obviously think, hey, I'm going to exercise to lose weight. But I can assure you, exercise is not really necessarily a weight loss tool. We can't really, in the long term, lose weight through exercise, but exercise is absolutely healthy for the human body. It's good for the mind. It helps you to relax. It helps to reduce rest. And sometimes we're able to burn off excess calories in the process. So I think everybody can do 30 minutes of exercise. Yes.
So it's interesting how you talk about modern times when we are driving all over the place. I quite remember growing up in Ghana where I had to walk about 15 to 20 minutes to go to school, 15, 20 minutes to come back home. Your parents will send you to go buy something, and it was a walk. And people were walking all the time. With the advancement in technology, we should I call it the curse of abundance, where you can do Uber, you can do deliveries, and so we don't get the opportunity to get in our exercise unconsciously, and so yes, we have to be intentional about it. Now, the question I have is, I have a desk job. I cannot leave my desk job, and I'm using the desk job as a reference because that is one of the major issues that people are dealing with. I have a desk job. I cannot leave my desk for a huge chunk of time, like go for a walk for 30 minutes, because I have to eat my lunch and then be back to work, and I have to get my bathroom break and stuff like that. So doesn't matter how long I walk, or can I just walk 2 minutes, come back and sit down, 2 minutes, come back and sit down, and just keep track of my 2 minutes, and then call it my 30 minutes for the day? Or does it have to be in a certain chunk of time for it to count? Then the second question is, if I'm walking like a snail or a sloth, does that count, versus do I have to be huffing and puffing when I'm walking for it to count as health benefit?
And I think these are two great questions. So again, I'm in the similar situation, as you say. I do a lot of sitting, writing, reading, really not doing a whole lot. So if you can, I think it's great to do quite vigorous 30 minutes. But I think it's, like I mentioned earlier, it's good to interrupt your sitting. So you sit for an hour, say, hey, I need to get up, stretch, walk for 2 minutes to the bathroom, walk up and down the stairs for a few minutes. So those are all, cumulative. You can add it up to make sure you are getting at least 30 minutes of exercise a day. And regarding whether you should just walk slowly or faster. So if you walk slowly, then of course, I think it's believed that maybe getting an hour of exercise is better. But if you're walking brisk, you do brisk walk, then 30 minutes is really good. And, I must say that, again, you mentioned growing up in Ghana, and I vividly remember growing up in Ghana also, we used to vacation a lot with my grandparents in the village. And I'm really appreciating, the village lifestyle. And I think for health, it really is the best. Unfortunately, village people, they don't have very good water, and infectious disease is one of their big challenge. Otherwise, I think the village lifestyle is really the best. Why do I say that? So I remember we used to walk like 2 hours to the farm. And then, of course, as kids, we're really not doing a whole lot, but the adults will be farming throughout the day. And then we bring foodstuffs. So these are organic food straight from the farms. So you bring it home, you're going to cook homemade organic food. And again, the types of food we were eating was very high in plant-based foods. Protein wasn't as abundant as we are eating now. So the diet clearly was very good. You were doing a lot of walking because you walk everywhere. You walk to church, you walk to the farm, you walk to fetch water. A lot of things you do is walking. And on top of that, there was no electricity back then. So you go to sleep when it gets dark around 6:30, 7 p.m. and you wake up at dawn. And you realize that, again, the human body is subjected to the circadian rhythm. I mentioned the hormones, and these hormones are regulated in a circadian pattern. It's important that we limit artificial light exposure. So these villagers, they were really getting good sleep, restorative sleep. They were walking everywhere. They were eating the right kind of foods. And of course, the stress level is much lower than moving to urban cities. So fast forward right now, you go to Ghana. Of course, most of us are living in the big cities, and Accra is so spread out that you find that, hey, to get from one end to the other, you got to use public transportation. Unfortunately, there are no parks, recreational parks that I'm aware of for you to even exercise if you want to. So these are some of the things that we feel like, oh my goodness, it's really affecting our health. Because of convenience, people are eating out a lot, and a fast food joint or restaurant food is obviously more palatable than the food you make at home, because it's really enriched with sugars and salts and all kinds of additives, and really rewarding the brain centers that drug of addiction rewards. So these are some of the factors that we need to be conscious of. And yes, because of convenience, we are eating out, I'm eating out, but I'm trying to cut back on how often I eat out and try to cook food at home. I'm trying to make sure my diet, I incorporate more vegetables, more fruits, less carbohydrates. And if I'm even eating carbohydrate, I'm eating carbohydrate that is rich in that. Those are complex carbohydrates like the potatoes, the yam, wild rice. Oh, I don't like wild rice, but I'm trying to get away from the white rice. So I think this is some of the measures that we all need to to take. And like you're saying, you're spending like 8 to 10 hours a day in the office. How about joining a gym? And make sure once you pay for it, hey, you force yourself to go there, to go and work out for an hour, 2 or 3 times a week, and the rest of the time just walk around. And house chores is good, by the way. Nowadays we try to do our own house chores. We do our hoovering, clean the bathroom, do the cooking, do the dishes. These are all things that we need to use to really keep the muscles active, keep the whole body active. And I think these are very good measures for our health also.
Anybody has questions? And thank you very much, Dr. Kwabi-Addo. Anybody has questions? So you've mentioned about the diet, right? Let me come and switch to the diet portion, because as a primary care physician who sees patients in the hospital, I tell my diabetic and hypertensive patients, when it comes to getting any benefit, I say diet, 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 and then I say exercise, diet, 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 exercise, because we eat 3 times a day most of the time. And if you are able to get a block of time in a day for exercise, you're good. But that also emphasizes that diet is very, very cardinal in all of our health. If you don't put in the calories, you are likely not going to retain the calories, no matter how long you sit. and if you're taking in just enough calories to be able to get your metabolic needs for the day or your energy needs for the day, then you are likely not going to be storing much calories. If you are eating the right calories, then you don't have the issue of worrying about inflammatory effects from the things that you are eating. The question that I have, which is a question I've not been able to answer myself, and thankfully I live in the United States where this is not a major issue, but for our friends who are in Africa, who don't have as much access to fresh leafy vegetables, well cleaned, well processed, or well stored, available in most places, except if you live in a food desert. How do you deal with the issue of diet? When I'm walking down the street in Accra, I can find my wache, my porridge, my banku joint, my fufu joint, gari and beans by the roadside very easily. It's not as easy to come across vegetables. And if you come across the vegetables, you're worried about whether there is high risk of getting cholera and other GI tract infections from it. How do you address this issue that our friends and family back home have to contend with?
Yeah, and I think you raise a very important point. This is real concern. So again, what you are saying is really addressing funds, even having money to be able to afford fresh fruits and vegetables. And, I go to Ghana, and I think this is some of the areas that we need to, and I'm hoping the public health sector in Ghana is really beginning to take note that once you're in the US, you realize Ghana is not such a big country. Why we cannot have good road network so that foods, and the land is rich, there are farm plains, the Kwabi Mountains. There's so many places where, the land is rich. They are constantly growing products, the contumely, the spinach, the aubergine, the plantain, the cocoyam. You hear cases where when it comes to harvest time, some of these foods actually go to waste because of lack of transportation. My desire is for the government to really begin to invest in really making sure that fresh fruits and vegetables are transported from some of these rural places to Accra and make it affordable for the average person to be able to buy those, and clearly do a public health campaign to promote, some of this fresh fruits and vegetables intake. Case in point, my cousin used to do what is called a strike. You go out in the Volta region, and during a mango harvest time, he would come back and say, look, a basket full of mango is being sold for like 2 cedis because they're just trying to get rid of it. So it's not a lack of, fresh fruits and vegetable in Ghana, but it's being able to transport it from where it's being produced into the urban cities and make it affordable for people to be able to buy. So I think this is some of the things that we want the public health sector to really take on board, because you look at the ensuing public health diseases that is really rampant in Ghana, and you look at the public health service, there's a disparity right there. We would not be able to support or be able to take care of people who are really beginning to express type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and so forth. Now, children in Ghana are being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. This was unheard of. Growing up in Ghana in the 80s, this was unheard of, because we were eating well, we were exercising. But now everybody is really just indulging in fast food and sugary beverages, which clearly is not good for our health. Yes. So I don't know if I answered your question. I think I was waffling on it a little bit.
No, I think yeah, the issue is systemic, like you said, and it takes a holistic approach to be able to address it. Unfortunately, the individual might not be able to address it comprehensively, but if as a nation we took a look at how to make sure that there's availability and these healthy food options are affordable, then people might be more motivated to try to make dietary changes. I see a hand up, so I'm going to acknowledge the hand. The name is Miss Anita E. Asamoah. If you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, yeah, hello.
Hello.
Okay, yeah, thanks for this session. Doctors Bernard and, oh, is it George, or am I right? Sorry. Okay, yeah, so for the women, now we notice that most women tend to put on weight after childbirth and the rest of them, and most times after marriage they are not able to return back to the way they were when they were single. or maybe the way they were before, childbearing. Now, is there something aside the food, maybe managing the food well and all that? Is there anything women especially can do? Because I have people that manage their food, just like I said, some even do the keto, but still, I mean, it's the same thing, especially around the midsection. They want to wear the dress, I mean, fitting dresses and all that. And then, while still giving birth, is it advisable to say that you want to lose weight? I always tell them that too. There's no need of, because you losing weight whilst you're still childbearing, like, because you're still going to get pregnant, put on weight, have another child and all that. So I always say that probably maybe when you are done. So I mean, am I right? Is it advisable to do the try to lose weight while still having children? That's one aside. And then now there's this the surgeon, people going for the surgery and all that, though it wasn't common before, but now it's becoming something that women in Ghana are doing, because they want to kind of please the men or the husbands and all that. Is it advisable?
Right. Thank you so much for this very, very important questions. So I'll take a shot at answering this. So with regards to women not being able to go back to their weight when they were young after childbearing, I think this really touches on your physiological weight. I'm looking at my family, for instance. My mother, she would tell you, and she was actually very skinny. She had us, and the weight is been what it is. But then the women in the family are all like that. There are other families where the women, after having kids, I had a teacher like that. You wouldn't even think she's somebody that had, is had children. So I think that really addresses physiological, and I think there's some sort of genetic component to that, because you see that women of European descent, be able to, I don't think they gain on as much weight as African women or African American women. So I think that's some of the things that we deal with is our biology, and the biology, really, there's not much you can do about it. But the take-home message is that at whatever body weight you are, the important thing is to be healthy. There are some really big people out there who are healthier than skinny people. So I don't think, sometimes we'll have the image that if you're skinny, that is good health. That's not true. You have supermodels that are like size 1, who have, thin hair, their hair is falling out, brittle nails and so forth. And you have some big women that are very, very healthy. With regards to trying to lose weight while you're having children, weight loss is very interesting. Again, people think, oh, I can exercise to lose weight. I can cut down on the amount of food to lose weight. That may be true in the short term, but in the long term, we again have a baseline or our body set that is difficult to move away from. This is why we have programs like The Big Loser. I don't know if you've seen that on television, where some of this it's amazing what people who are morbidly obese are able to lose 300, 400 pounds, because they do all this really drastic exercises and dietary regimen. But guess what? After about a year, they go back to their original weight. And even in some cases, some people gain additional weight. So the role of diet and exercise in really modulating our weight is very, very difficult to really gauge well. I mentioned that we cannot really lose weight through exercise. Why is that? We don't have a lot of control over our caloric intake. So when we eat food, it can be divided into three. 10% is used, 10% of the energy we derive from food is used in food digestion itself. About 70% of the energy is used in bodily metabolism. A lot of the things that goes on, blood circulation, cell renewal, so many of the things that happens inside our bodies, breathing, sleeping, walking, that obviously uses a lot of energy. So really all we have the control over is about 30% of the caloric intake is what is used in physical activity, which is of course walking, running, whatever those. So we only have like control over 30% of the caloric intake, so it's difficult to really gauge and say, okay, I'm eating so much calories and I know I'm going to burn so much calories, because about between 60 to 80% of the calories that we intake, we really don't have any control over that. There's biology, there's so many other things that is going on. So it's been studied, and we know that for the average woman, if your daily intake, your daily caloric intake is about 1,000 to 1,500, that is ideal. And for men, it's between 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day. This is really ideal because based on studies, we know that if we consume this amount of calories, the body is able to successfully utilize most of it. So this really helps us against the situation where we have excess calories, which obviously is going to be stored as fat. And then this can lead to all the weight problem. And I must say, the body really fights against losing fat. The body does not want to lose fat. Fat storage is a defense mechanism. We as human beings, we have adapted, I don't want to use the word evolve, but we have adapted to store fat for periods of starvation. So among all the living organisms, we can survive longest than any species because we have the ability to store fat for periods of starvation. Unfortunately, we live in times where food is abundant in many parts of the world. So you can eat 6 times a day if you want, you can eat as much as you want. So this is unheard of in the history of mankind. Compared to our ancestors who were like the nomads, they had to walk several miles to gain their food. Over the past 10,000 years, compared to the millennia that man has been on this earth, we have been able to develop agriculture, and we're at the point that we can manufacture food in the large dense, high dense, large quantity. And this is what is really causing problems for us. So we are making high caloric dense food, which is ultra processed with all the sugars, with all the salt, with all the additives, basically rewarding our brain centers. And, people are running into the risk of food addiction. So we got to really come back to making sure we are eating just about the right amount of food. And that really requires a lot of discipline. And regarding people doing surgery, and I don't know if you're referring to gastric bypass, for vain reason, that's wrong. And really you need dietitian to really advise you on that. Yes, individuals who are morbidly obese are really at risk of all kinds of diseases. So for those individuals, and of course you need a physician to really advise you, I think gastric bypass has been shown to really significantly improve their health. So for those individuals, I think, yes, it's a good surgery to have. But if you're just doing it for vain reason, I think you may end up incurring other health effects. So I don't know if I answer your questions. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, hello. Yeah.
So, yeah, I can hear you now.
So I would chime in and say that in all of this, I think that the important point we need to remember and remember over and over again is it's an issue of lifestyle, right? If I'm a woman of childbearing age and I decide that I want to adopt a dietary system or a lifestyle, an exercise program, it's not because after this childbirth, I want to lose the weight that I gained. It's because I want to stay consistent and not pick up a behavior or a habit that long-term will become very difficult to overcome. And Dr. Kwabi-Addo mentioned earlier on that when we talk about diet and exercise, it's not just for weight loss. There are many people who have higher BMIs and are a lot healthier compared to some people who are skinny. And I can attest to that because I live in North Dakota, where we are surrounded by a lot of farmers, and I am seeing all these 90-year-old and 88-year-old patients whose BMIs are 35 and 37 and 40. And also, I think I need to mention that we don't do this for the sake of beauty or the looks. Everybody is beautiful. Every woman, every male is beautiful. They say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. For me, everybody is beautiful. You need to feel comfortable in your body, and you need to accept your body. We preach this, we teach this, we emphasize it, we drum it all around because it is important for your quality of life. And that becomes the major emphasis, or the major point that we emphasize. There is a question in the chat from Kwame Opokuwari. He says that going over the slides, there were several factors that were mentioned as being causes of chronic diseases. Now, are these the only factors, or are there other minor contributing factors that we should be aware of and that we could, I would say, do something about?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So I basically try to highlight some of the pertinent factors. So based on epidemiological data, so this perhaps has factors that rank at the top, but you're absolutely right. There are so many other factors that plays a role in our health and of course in disease stage. And I think it makes us all realize that the human body is very complex. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, as the Bible says. So there's all these factors, and these factors, there's a crosstalk between some of the factors that are going on in the human body. So it's very difficult to pinpoint and hold on to just one main factor. But we know that diet is an overriding factor. Physical activity is an overriding factor. And, we talked about how hormones play a very important role. And the role of hormone, we also have to appreciate that these hormones, how they are regulated is very, very important, which brings into our sleep pattern, because the circadian rhythm is how hormones are regulated. Take, for instance, cortisol, which is the stress response hormone, for instance. Cortisol level is very low when we sleep, and it's highest in the morning to really give us the burst of energy that we need to begin the day. So the body needs to reset every 24 hours, to maintain that cortisol level. Just an example. Now, what happens is that if we are constantly under stress, this chronic stress, then the cortisol level is maintained at a high level, even when we are sleeping. And guess what? This can lead to insulin resistance and metabolic disorders. So we cannot just dissociate, insulin resistance is only caused by high level of insulin. No, there are a lot of, hormones that can also have the same effect. Estrogen level can have the same thing, testosterone level, androgen levels. So it's a very complex dynamic that is going on inside the human body. But some of the basic things that we can do is obviously, and I think these are some of the most important also, is eat well, sleep well, exercise, cut down on your stress. And by the way, we should look at how the ancient people lived. We talk about the Paleolithic era. Of course, we're not going back to those times, but let's look at how they lived and what are some of the things that we can do to modulate our lifestyle and of course live in the best of two worlds. And I think that's some of the things that we want to be discussing over and over again.
So once again, that's a very, very important question. We talked about making sure you get enough sleep, just getting the exercise, getting the diet under control, maintaining a healthy lifestyle. I'd like to throw in two things that are not very much an issue in Africa, but has started creeping up, or maybe even three. Recently, we heard of the opiate epidemic that was going on in parts of Africa, tramadol or tramol, as some would call it. So just making sure that you are not taking medications that are not prescribed, number one, and if it's over-the-counter medication, taking it in the smallest quantities possible and seeking medical advice as early as possible. And I emphasize that because growing up in Ghana, you feel body aches and then you run to the drugstore by the roadside and then you tell your symptoms, and somebody who has pretty early minimum education about disease processes would give you medications and you go and take those medications. And when I came into healthcare, I came to realize that we probably have had a lot of people killed just by Tylenol and ibuprofen, which we call brufen in Africa. A person has mild fevers. There is an infectious process that is starting and the body is telling us that there is an infection, something going wrong. Then somebody gives you Tylenol or ibuprofen or acetaminophen or paracetamol, as we would call them. And then we take those medications. It suppresses the fever, but does not treat the underlying infection. So seeking early medical care becomes very important, because when you suppress the symptoms, the disease process itself continues and it can become very dangerous. And by the time you show up at a clinic or a hospital, it is too late. Also, smoking and alcohol use. Again, not very, very common as we see in the Western world, but that's something to think about. If we could keep our environments cleaner, right? If we could keep our environments cleaner, if we could come up with better methods of cooking. So I went to Malawi and we have all these people who have lung diseases, and people were like, but we don't smoke. And I'm like, yes, you do. But we don't smoke. And I'm like, yes, you do. You use firewood to cook and you use charcoal to cook and you are by it for a long time and you are exposed to a lot of smoke. So these are some of the things that we probably need to be paying attention to in our culture and amongst our people. We try to do away with the habits that we have adopted from the Western world, and those that we have not adopted yet, do our very best to not pick those up.
Yeah, so if I could chime in there, and yes, you're absolutely right. A lot of the medication, actually, some of the medication, they also disrupt, the endocrine or the hormone signaling pathway. So back to Anita's question, sometimes the excess body weight could be due to some sort of medication that has been prescribed for the individual. And just like you mentioned, that we can just go down to the drugstore and buy whatever medication we want. Especially one thing that I feel like, oh my goodness, Ghanaians, we need to get away from is just over-the-counter antibiotics that people are still buying. And I mentioned that, our gut microbiome, the bacteria, the fungi, the viruses that reside in our gut play a very, very important role in our health. And if we abuse certain medications such as antibiotics and so forth, these are, this can really disrupt or cause dysbiosis or just kill off. Yes, you're trying to get rid of the bad bacteria, but you're killing off good bacteria. And it takes a number of many months before you're able to restore that balance of your gut microbiome. So this is another level of complexity in the whole body regulation. But something that I'm always saying, I need you physicians to tell us is periodic fasting, especially in the Western world. So food is in abundance. you need discipline to really be able to just cut down on the amount of food we eat. And we need doctors, we need you guys to really advise us, hey, stop and do fasting. And I think at the biochemical level, I can tell you that fasting has so much benefits. So one way, of course, fasting is more holistic than just stop eating or just starving, basically. And I think even the World Health Organization recognizes that the human body is made up of the spirit, the soul, and the physical being. And fasting from a religious perspective is really holistic, really addresses your spiritual well-being, your psychological, mental well-being, and then of course your physical well-being. Now, as a biochemist, we know that when we fast, we actually induce metabolic switch. So instead of constantly just telling the body, store more calories in the form of fat, now we are challenging the body to begin to use some of the stored fat for the energy that the body needs for all its biological processes. And I tell you, there's so many biological signals that it changes when we fast. The cells begin to renew itself, and it really manifests itself as, looking younger, looking healthier. The mind is sharper. There's so much that is going on when we fast. And as a Christian, I, participate in a local church beginning of the year fasting for about 3 weeks and halfway through the year. And yes, I do lose a little bit of weight. And when I stop the fasting, the weight comes back on, but that's okay. I think the periods of fasting really challenges the body to begin to, use some of the stored energy. It's cleansing, it's purifying, and I really, I want the doctors to really tell us more. That hey, guys, begin to fast, because this is really healthy for your body. So I just want to give this to the doctors on the platform this afternoon.
Very, very important point about the fasting. And a lot of people think it's really, really difficult to do. But when you really think about it, if you eat 3 days, three square meals a day, breakfast 7 o'clock, 6 a.m., lunch around noon, and then dinner before 7 p.m. so that you are not eating too late, then you already have 12 hours in between your last meal of the day and your first meal of the day. And the concept of intermittent fasting is skip a meal or two and just keep your 2 small meals between 8 hours or 6 hours, and then let the body process everything that has been stored in for a little bit. And so if you ate 2 meals, noon and around 6 p.m., 5 p.m., and then skip the next meal until lunchtime, you probably are hitting your intermittent fasting goal. So long as you are not going back and gouging a lot of calories after that period, you would be doing very great. Is there any other question at this point? We thank those of you that were able to make it on Zoom. And I know that there are some individuals who said that they signed into Facebook. We thank you all very much for your time. At this point, if you did not believe that there is substance that is going to likely be in the book, at least the author has shared as much information from his memory, and that should reassure you that whatever he took his time to gather the data and put into the book would be a lot more information than has been actually shared within this brief period of time. I am not into marketing. I am not a salesperson. GPSF does not get any commission, but just looking at the information that he shared with us, I believe that the book would be of much benefit to all of us. Get a copy for your friends and your family, and the money that would be saved from that process by not getting sick and coming to us doctors and going to buy medications at the pharmacies, I believe will be a lot. The title is Check the Fats. Check the Fats. And I just used that title and I went on Amazon, and when I typed check there and then I typed FA, the next word that came was the TS to complete the title of the book, which means it's a very popular book on Amazon. So please get a copy, and we pray that you enjoy good health. I used to do some motivational speaking for high school students, which I'm going to be restarting very soon. And I always opened with one of my favorite verses in scripture, which is the third book of John. It's a very short passage, and the second verse where the apostle says, "My dear friend, I wish that amongst all things that you will be in good health and that you will prosper even as your soul prospers." So good health, that is your physical well-being, is as important as our spiritual well-being. We pray that we all continue to do well. Thank you very much, Dr. Kwabi-Addo, for making the time to share with us. We will definitely invite you again. Now,
What's your Facebook name?
The question was, what's your Facebook name if you are on social media?
No, not him. You yourself.
Myself is Kwabi Asumeng.
Kwabi
Asumeng. And GPSF is also on Facebook. So if you type Ghana Physicians and Surgeons Foundation, you'll find our Facebook.
No, I followed the page though.
Okay. All right. I'll leave maybe about 5 to 7 minutes for anybody that has a last minute question. Any closing points you want to make, Dr. Kwabi-Addo?
So yeah, I'd just like to say thank you so much, Gabriel and Eno, for inviting me. This is great. I think we need to talk more as we are sharing ideas. It really helps us and reminds us of the things, the changes that we need to make. And I just want us to also be aware that a lot of us think, hey, as I'm aging, it's my lot in life, I'm going to get some chronic disease, heart disease, stroke, whatever. And I just want to say that these are diseases that are not common in certain populations. So it's not an age-related disease, but it's clearly an environmental disease. And I think we all have the responsibility. I mean, I go to Ghana and I worry. Accra and the big cities in particular, the incidence of all these chronic diseases is just unheard of, because they're embracing a lot of the Western lifestyles, and it's like they can't even hear you trying to tell them that, no, this is not good for us, especially with regards to our diet. And I think we all need to make concerted effort to really make it loud, speak it out, just, announce it, tell them, no, we got to get back to basics. The foods that our parents ate, our ancestors ate. By the way, this ties in with our microbiome, because that's what we got from our families. So the food of our ancestors is clearly the best food for us. And yes, we can adapt to a lot of different diets, but the standard American diet or the standard Western diet is not one of them. So good diet, physical activities, good sleep. Let's cut down on stress. And I think those are good recipes. And of course, we know that there's a God out there. We worship God. And I think that's what I would like to leave with you all. Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you all very much. We will be publishing our next Q&A series very soon. And we hope to see you and your friends and your family and your church members and your community members. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.